After spending more than 20 years on Missouri's death row, Johnny Johnson was executed by lethal injection. But this story is far from simple. From his violent and tragic upbringing to a horrifying crime and a deeply debated execution, Johnson's case forces us to confront haunting questions about childhood trauma, mental illness, and the American justice system. To understand how a 24-year-old man ended up strapped to a gurney in a Missouri prison, we need to go back to a quiet summer morning in 2003, to a 6-year-old girl named Cassandra Casey Williamson, and the moment she vanished without a trace. This is the full story of Johnny Johnson, his crime, his final meal, and his controversial end on death row in the United States. If you find content like this informative and important, make sure to subscribe to our channel right now. It helps us tell the stories that matter and keep you up to date on developing justice cases across the U.S. It was just after 6 a.m. on July 26, 2003, when 6-year-old Casey Williamson climbed out of bed in her pajamas. Her father, Ernie, had just stepped into the bathroom before leaving early for his shift at the cement factory. When he returned just minutes later, Casey was gone. The family had hosted a small barbecue the night before, and Ernie had chosen to sleep at the house to be closer to his kids, but he wasn't the only one staying over that night. Johnny Johnson, a 24-year-old longtime family friend, had crashed on the couch. He had been around since Casey was born. She knew him. She trusted him. So when he told her that morning he knew a fun place to play, she thought nothing of it. He promised it would just be the two of them. He said there were games. So she followed him out the door, and their walk ended at an abandoned glass factory on the edge of town, an eerie, crumbling reminder of a bygone era. That's where everything changed. Away from witnesses, away from the light, Johnny cornered her. At first, he exposed himself. Then he ordered her to take off her pajamas. Casey tried to run. She resisted, but she was a child, and Johnny, a grown man, snapped her. He grabbed a brick and beat her in the head. Over and over. Casey tried to crawl away, dazed and bleeding, but he followed slam another large stone down on her fragile skull until she stopped moving. Later, he tried to cover his tracks. He dragged her body to a nearby fire pit and covered her with dirt and debris. Then he stripped off his bloody clothes and cleaned himself in the river. But no amount of water could wash away what happened. Back at the house, panic had already set in. Neighbors and police flooded the area, hoping she had just wandered off. But within hours, Johnny became the prime suspect. To understand why this crime occurred, we need to go back even further into Johnny Johnson's troubled past. Born to a struggling young mother, Johnny never stood a chance. He was the third child, unplanned, unwanted, and soon forgotten. There was no stability, no nurturing, and often no love. One of the earliest documented incidents involved his mother's boyfriend nearly drowning him in a bathtub. He wasn't trying to scare the boy. He almost killed him. That trauma followed Johnny into school, where he quickly fell behind. He was developmentally delayed, socially isolated, still bedwetting, well into middle school. By his teenage years, he had turned to alcohol and drugs to numb the pain. At 18, something in him broke entirely. He walked himself into a psychiatric hospital and said the voices in his head were telling him to take his own life. Those voices? They weren't kind. Doctors diagnosed him with paranoid psychosis and schizoaffective disorder, a blend of delusion, hallucination, and depression. In a chilling report, doctors noted the voices were command in nature. They whispered, kill, kill, kill. One name showed up often in charts, Leviathan, a demonic figure Johnny believed was speaking directly to him. He convinced himself he wasn't from this world, that he could bend time and bones, that he was a vampire, even a god. Even after years on medication and psychiatric oversight, the delusions persisted. And yet, in February 2003, just 6 months before Casey's murder, Johnny was released from a psychiatric facility. It didn't take long for authorities to locate Johnny. He returned home and tried to act like nothing had happened. But a witness came forward saying they saw him walking with a little girl that morning. Police brought him in for questioning. First, he denied everything, sat in silence, fidgeted in his chair, but eventually, under the weight of guilt or simply exhaustion, he broke down. He told detectives what happened, where it happened, how it happened. Less than a mile from the Williamson home, searchers found the small, broken body of Casey just as Johnny described it. She had been dumped behind the crumbling walls of the abandoned factory, barely buried, treated like trash. He confessed. But the question everyone wanted answered was, why? The murder of Casey Williamson rocked the nation. Johnny Johnson was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and attempted rape. Prosecutors wasted no time building a case. In 2005, 2 years after the murder, Johnson stood trial in a St. Louis County courtroom. No one denied what had happened. The only question was whether Johnny understood what he was doing. His defense argued he was experiencing a psychotic break at the time of the crime, that he was delusional, hallucinating, and completely detached from reality. A psychiatrist confirmed this on the stand. So did Johnny's girlfriend, saying he had stopped taking his medication and became unpredictable in the days leading up to the murder. But prosecutors fought back. They said Johnny knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't confused. He didn't hallucinate the child, the blood, or the murder. This was a crime of intent and cruelty. They pointed out that he tried to hide her body, that he cleaned himself in the river, that he confessed when caught. He may have had mental issues, but the state argued he was still responsible. On January 18, 2005, the jury returned a verdict, guilty. Less than 2 months later, on March 7, the judge sentenced Johnny Johnson to death by lethal injection, plus 3 consecutive life sentences. Johnny Johnson entered Missouri's death row at Potosi Correctional Center in 2005. But prison didn't silence the voices. They followed him, tormented him for years. He smeared feces on walls carved into his own skin and told guards he was not from this dimension. He ranted about burning skies and corpse-filled fires, about the end of the world. Once, he told a psychologist, "When I was born, the world was created. When I die, the world will die." By 2021, he claimed to be a vampire who could hear every voice in the prison at once. Despite years of therapy and medications, his grip on reality never returned. As his execution date approached, Johnny's lawyers shifted focus. They argued he was not fit for execution, that he couldn't comprehend why the state was killing him. One forensic psychiatrist sat down with him and concluded Johnny believed Satan was behind the government and that his execution would trigger the apocalypse. Still, no court intervened. Not the Missouri Supreme Court, not the federal courts, not even the U.S. Supreme Court. On August 1st, 2023, clemency was denied. The final chapter of Johnny Johnson's life was documented down to the minute. Last meal, a bacon cheeseburger, curly fries, and a strawberry milkshake. Last words. He left a short note. "God bless. Sorry to the people and family I hurt." At 6 p.m., he was wheeled into the execution chamber. He lay flat on the gurney, tucked under a white sheet, hands secured. According to witnesses, he turned his head slightly to the left as if listening to a spiritual advisor's final words. Then he closed his eyes. At 6:33 p.m., Johnson was pronounced dead. He was 45 years old. For Casey Williamson's family, the pain didn't end with Johnson's death. Her mother had carried unimaginable grief for 2 decades. After the murder, her older daughter turned to drugs and died from an overdose. Her younger children struggled with mental illness and trust issues. Even her grandfather, Ernie's father, drank himself to death. I'll never put Casey to rest, but I need to put this part of it to rest. But not everyone agreed. Casey's father, Ernie, once told reporters, "I never said I didn't want Johnny to die. I'd love to see him die a miserable death." In Ernie's eyes, the death penalty was too easy. He had spent time inside Potosi Correctional Center himself. To him, suffering in prison every day was the real punishment. Either way, justice, in its final form, had been served. Johnny Johnson's story is more than just about good and evil. It's about mental illness and accountability, trauma and consequences, and whether someone can ever truly outrun their past. Was he a monster born of choice or a victim born of chaos? Was justice truly served? That answer may depend on who you ask. But one thing is certain, a little girl lost her life, and many others never fully recovered from that moment. And now with Johnny Johnson gone, some have closure. Others have only more questions. Let us know what you think in the comments. Should he have been executed? Was he capable of understanding his actions? Was justice done? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into real death row cases, crime stories, and the legal systems that define them.